a very interesting concept which is catching attention since a few years. Entrepreneurship at the school level. How many ideas have actually come out of school? And are we really able to nurture them? Are schools providing the right skill sets for students to make them ready for future? Is encouraging students to ask questions and taking risks important? Our next set of speakers would answer this for you. I would now like to call upon Ms. Srilakshmi Reddy, founder and director of Keystone Education Group, Mr. Ravi Vemuri, software architect, professor, and a very dynamic parent, Mr. Rakesh Gupta, managing partner of Lowest Stroke Advisors, Ms. Mridu and Pragya Nagori, young entrepreneurs, founders of Urja, who are going to be moderating this panel today. May I please have all of you on stage?
Namaste everyone, I'm Mridu Nagori and I'm Pragya Nagori. Our journey of entrepreneurship began back in 2006 as young entrepreneurs from Nanhipuri to Urja to Poem. It's a sustainable living entrepreneurship firm where we focus on reusing, recycling and reducing waste and products that can help you in future. So our goal has always been to make an impact while making an income, and it's always been about sustainability. So what really is sustainability? To God, that's what it is. All of us are very familiar with that concept because it's instilled in our mindsets, in our hobbies and our habits. Recycling, reducing and reusing all our consumption. Sustainability is a very hard topic to convey to people as awareness takes a big role in this. And what you are now and what you consume and move with time is what sustainability is. And the time is now. We believe in being a part of the solution and not the pollution. And we believe in Poem. So let's get this started with our topic, entrepreneurship in schools. Welcome panelists. So we'll start with a few facts. Significantly, the number of women entrepreneurs stood at 14%, up from 10% and 11% in the previous 2 years. India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, expected to witness year-on-year growth, annual growth of 12 to 15%. So we all are aware that India is an agricultural country and not really a technology-driven country from the very basics. So what do you feel the need to introduce entrepreneurship at the school level through project-based learning, and what course would it be on? Srilakshmi ma'am, let's start with you.
Thank you for this opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. The whole idea that, we are all here talking about entrepreneurship itself, I feel is a huge, movement. And it's a very good sign and a positive sign. And that there, 3 women on the dais already, so which is like sharing equal partnership in entrepreneurship. But getting back to the question, right? The idea that we all think about entrepreneurship as a subject itself is of a concern for me. And the way you look at entrepreneurship is, the 3 approaches that have been there, for a while. It's understanding, it's whether about entrepreneurship, for entrepreneurship, or through entrepreneurship. The first one is about entrepreneurship. So I think over ages, what we have been doing at universities or colleges is about entrepreneurship. It's more theoretical. You're just talking about entrepreneurship and you're giving them the theory of what entrepreneurship is all about. And for entrepreneurship is the idea where you're teaching, the students who want to become entrepreneurs at the stage where they're just about to start a business or they're just about to, start something on their own. But what we really need to focus on is through entrepreneurship. So it is not a subject, it's a process and it's a mindset. So what we do through entrepreneurship is all about the journey that the children will have to go through. So there's this book called Outliers, and there's this 10,000 hours rule. So what 10,000 hours rule is all about is for anyone to become a world-class expert in any particular skill, you need to spend 10,000 hours in that journey. So how would you spend 10,000 hours? Only when you start early. So when you really create a process in the school, or in any institution where you're allowing children or students to go through a journey of entrepreneurship and make it more of an experience and build that competence and the skill set, that's when it's true entrepreneurial education. It is not a subject, it is not cannot be done in isolation, and it is not something that you just do as an activity.
So perhaps a project-based learning.
Yes.
So what would be your suggestion or your opinion on having a culturally inclined or an agriculturally inclined education on entrepreneurship, because that's what we're known as a country for?
Yeah, so I would actually slightly disagree with that opinion, right? I think we were an agricultural economy to start with post-independence, right? And I think times have changed. Post that, I think the 90s and the 2000s, we converted from agriculture economy to a service economy, right? And the future lies in a creator economy. And that's why the impetus on entrepreneurship has suddenly become so important. So my sense is that as a country, as an economy, as a society, we have gone through that transformation where we were an agrarian society earlier. We moved to a service economy post that. And going forward in the future, we'll need to become a creator economy, and which is potentially going to happen only and only if schools at a starting stage embrace entrepreneurship as a thought process, as ma'am was mentioning, that it becomes a thought process, it becomes a part of the curriculum, it becomes a part of the delivery which needs to happen. And I would also want to add that when we talk about an entrepreneurship course, right, and we talk about what happens in an entrepreneurship program, a lot of time it gets into this fascination of starting a new business, having a billion-dollar business out there, and you've seen TV ads, right? I mean, I will not name the company, otherwise I'll get into legal trouble, but you've seen those ads where the kids who are starting some businesses, they're like VCs standing outside, planning to give them checks. That's not entrepreneurship. What we need to aspire at a school level is to build an entrepreneurial mindset. That's the core of it, right? And that mindset is important, very, very critical for all of us to ensure that kids get at a very early age. It's important because it helps kids have that life skills to succeed going forward in the future. It helps kids to pick up very, very tangible skills, and also helps in their career planning as well, right? So I think that's really what schools should aspire for as a part of the entrepreneurship program.
So do you also mean that the environment around the students and the values that are instilled in them plays a major role in entrepreneurial mindset?
It does. I think it does. And I think I see a lot of that happening now, right? I think this forum is a good example of something like that happening. I see a very similar thing happening in the society that I stay in, the housing society that I stay in. The parents have become a lot more, I would say, exposed to entrepreneurial activities. They have become a lot more open to failure. I mean, that's the topic of our discussion. And when I first got the invite, I was feeling very happy because I'm actually an epitome of entrepreneurial failure. I would have built 3 businesses and I've failed on all 3 of them. I'm on my 4th right now. We'll talk about it later sometime. But parents have become very, very, very open about that, and that helps kids to take risk, to start something new. Very recently, I think, with a bunch of kids from multiple schools in Hyderabad, we did a program in the 26th of January. Basically, they were thinking about starting a online second-hand book sale business. And they actually went out and actually opened a shop on 26th January to sell second-hand books. So they're taking baby steps towards that, and parents and the ecosystem is actually supporting them to do some of those things.
So what is your take on this?
Hello. I'm so glad you asked. So the straightforward answer is absolutely we need entrepreneurial education right from the primary school itself, high school. We don't have to glorify it in fancy terms. It's a process, and I'm in full agreement with that. It's got to be organic. It cannot seem foreign. It cannot seem like a band-aid on top of a traditional K-12 school system. It has to be imbued throughout the educational process. So I represent the role of a parent here. not as an educator, not as an innovator, not as a leader. So my responsibility is to offer my kids the right kind of sensitization to the world that they live in. So a good friend of mine is very averse to giving kids electronic gadgets. But I know my kids are going to be in a world where electronic gadgets are the norm. So I believe that they should be able to use them as effective tools. Entrepreneurship as a journey, as a process, is important today. I believe the aptitude of my children is far higher at their age than where I was when I was in their grade. And this is just the trajectory of the world that we are in. So I'm a big believer of entrepreneurship education. I'm a very thankful parent to Pawan and team for the opportunity that my kids have on this forum, on this dais, on this platform. And from my perspective, I would encourage all parents to take advantage of it. Because all morning I was sitting there, I was not under the glare of the light. And here I'm under the glare of that light. It's a different world, it's a different perspective, it's a different kind of a stress. Unless you are used to it, you will not be able to be effective and efficient.
Right. So, sir, saying it's imbued in us, and as children, I would say education should happen in schools and at homes. So, just a little memory that I have from my school is that I was told, because I'm a Marwari, business and entrepreneurship is in my blood, and I couldn't disagree with that since it's going on for more than 100 generations. So what would be your take on this as a parent? How much would you be inclined, and how much would you do, and what would you do for it?
I'm a big believer of experiential learning. If you want to know how rockets are built, you should be in the midst of rockets. If you want to know how to go up a mountain, you should be in the midst of the mountains, and you should be talking to people who go up and down the mountain. If you want to start a business, what better platform, what better forum than to learn from people who are enormously more experienced, successful, and also had their share of failures.
Perfect.
They have paid the dues. My belief is, instead of talking, we should be doing. But we should talk and also do. Theory, practice. What and how things are supposed to work is only one part of the equation. How they don't actually work in real life is the other part. How companies are supposed to run is one part. How companies actually fail spectacularly is another part. Complete education means you are very familiar, exposed, and able to absorb the real risks. One of my philosophies is you need to be able to understand the top 10 modes of failure of any field that you will want to go in.
Exactly.
If Elon Musk is wanting to start a rocket company, he needs to know, how do rockets fail? How do rockets become bombs? Likewise, if you want to be a parent, you need to know how kids could potentially fail in life. So if you have proper training as a parent, which I didn't have, and I think most of you might not have, unless you have grandparents who have more wisdom, I believe that you should be involved as a parent. You should understand their journey. When your daughter comes to me and says, I hate this, I cannot say, how can you say that? That's total baloney. You cannot say that. You should say, what's going on? What are your fears? What are your anxieties? What are your apprehensions? Where are the gaps? Why is it that you're not able to enjoy? Entrepreneurship for a baniya or for certain kinds of people with families who have industrial or company starting background or businesses, it may come organically, but the next generation may hate the business. My uncle was a big real estate entrepreneur. He has 9 sons and 2 daughters, and not one of them is in the real estate business. They all hated the lawsuits, the court cases and everything that went along with it. So one of them is a head of the Syracuse computer science department. They're all successful, but not one of them entered the real estate industry. So you have to go based on the interest of the children, but as a parent, you should be willing to make the journey along with them, and you should support them. And I believe a 22nd century imperative is, how best can you equip them with the tools to be successful in this time and age and with this trajectory going forward?
That's a very progressive thought, sir.
I'll just add to that, Pragya. I happen to be a Marwari as well, and I happen to grow up in a family which had family business from a long period of time. I think what we have to look at is essentially data, right? I mean, look at data of people who have started businesses, who have been successful entrepreneurs. Somewhere you will see that they were inspired at a very young age by somebody who was running a business right now. A lot of entrepreneurs that you see today essentially happen to be from a business family. I mean, there is data which kind of suggests that. Not just on the entrepreneurship side, if you see people who are singers, people who are actors, there's a lot of influence which comes at a very, very young age, right? And that's a benefit with which some kids have who have grown up in a business family because they get exposed to it at a very young age. And I think that has to go slightly more broad-based. And that goes back to your previous question, whether entrepreneurship program is required, whether we should have an entrepreneurship program in school. I think that's the reason that there are a whole bunch of kids who are not exposed to potentially this business mindset at a early age in their families. And hence you need to have a structured entrepreneurship program which exposes them to that thought process. So I think that's really the key on why a program like this is required and why you actually see some people who come from a business background are able to take that leap of faith and start a business of their own going forward in the future.
So entrepreneurial journey comes with a lot of failures, and us being teenagers, we do not enable ourselves to see what will happen after the failure. Will we be able to cope up with it, or will we ever be able to get back to the things that we were doing before? What will our friends say, etc. So how do you think kids could cope up with these thoughts, and how would you support them?
I think it's very important, I have a question, to you all. If you can just raise your hand if you agree with this. How many of you were, when you are of, like a student, like a, school-going age, were given the choice or were told by your parents that just go do whatever you want? So raise your hand if you were told that just go do whatever you want. So what, like 5, 6? So which is, just in this room itself, we see that there are very few people who are raising their hands. That means we have come from environments where we were not given that voice, choice, and freedom, right? And that means the rest of them are coming from environments where you had to figure out things on your own. So there's a very interesting anecdote that I wanted to share. So yesterday we were at a meeting where we were, launching this football, academy. And we were talking to this owner of a football league. And all the players in his team come from certain, area in India, like mostly north and northeast. And we were talking about why is this pattern there? And if you observe such patterns, even in entrepreneurship, why is that most entrepreneurs who are really successful are coming from certain kind of economic backgrounds? So, because these players were coming from an environment where there was no expectation, and whether they fail or whether they really make it or not, people around them were, not really bothered about it. It was just the willingness of that individual that they could, really come out and just do whatever they want. Yes, it's a great thing that we're introducing entrepreneurship. We're talking about this, and but even here in this room, if we have to really put a benchmark to the kind of socio-economic backgrounds that all of us are coming up with, right? There's still a balance, I would say, right? So when you're coming from environments where there is a lot of support system, there is a lot of, expectation also aligned with it, and then it's something that, you carry that baggage. And we have to consciously make an effort if you're coming from an environment where all these things are prevailing, where constantly you should just think that failure, it's like a sportsmanship, right? Whether you're failing, whether you're doing it or not, just move on with not really expecting anything. Because when you're especially starting very early on, you don't really start off with a baggage of, okay, I'm really investing a lot of money into this, and it's like a life or death situation for me. So there's that advantage also. So understanding the environments that we are coming, from, and understanding of, okay, if you're coming from these kind of environments, what is that we should be prepared for, and how do we really equip somebody who's coming from a very low income background and is, going through a path of entrepreneurship. There's a different kind of preparation that you would have to go through. And you're coming from a background where there's a lot of support system that you're coming in with, and at the same time there's expectation also. There's a different kind of, preparation. So I think it's all about understanding the environment that you're coming from. Yeah.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. So how serious are fund houses about investing in ideas coming from schools? From the generation of slackers and social media influenced people. What would be your opinion?
Honestly, I think the ecosystem has to develop a lot more when fund managers will start looking at companies coming out of school students as a funding opportunity. The reason I say that, I think that there are very structural and technical challenges with some of it, right? I think kids, while they're studying at school and starting something new, one part of their time also goes into kind of putting together their studies and all of that, and the part of it goes in building the venture, right? And if I'm an investor, I'm putting my money or somebody else's money, my first preference would be to an entrepreneur who's actually spending 100% of his time on the business, right? So that becomes a bit of a challenge if somebody is starting at a school level. Second, what happens is that essentially people who are below 18 years of age can't get into a contractual agreement. So that becomes a bit of a technical challenge which is there. Third, essentially, if I have multiple deals to kind of invest in, right, I would potentially pick up something which is slightly more dense right now versus opportunities which are sparse, right? So some of these things make it very difficult for fund managers to look at the startups coming up from the school system very, very seriously. But I think over a period of time, as the ecosystem changes, as we start seeing more businesses coming out, as we start seeing successful things coming out of it, I think the attention will follow that. But at this stage, at least in the Indian ecosystem, I don't think a lot of fund managers are looking at investing in startups. And at that stage, honestly, I think the fascination again shouldn't be about fundraise. The fascination should be around creating and building something new, right? And at that stage, you require a very little amount of money, which would potentially come from friends and family. So I would say that if somebody is thinking about fundraise from a venture partner or a fund manager at an early stage, don't waste your energy. Keep focusing on building your startup, money will follow automatically.
What if the concept and the idea that they have come up with is worthy enough for you to invest, and suppose they have come over a pretty good age. Suppose, let's say they are 18 now, and then they had a period of 1 to 2 years before coming to you, and they have a structured program, they have concepts, ideas that are new. How would you?
No, I would say that if somebody has matured to that level, if they've built a business which has shown the product market fit, which has seen a level of traction, and there is an entrepreneur which is completely focusing on it, it doesn't matter whether it is coming from a school student. Honestly, it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying that given the number of opportunities which come out of school students right now, it's not an area of focus. So you have to understand that the fund managers or the firms which run funds are very, very small teams. There will be a team of 4 or 5 people. And for them to kind of focus energy on a segment from which very few opportunities come out becomes very, very difficult. But having said that, if there is an interesting opportunity, and I know a couple of such opportunities. There's this school called Pesto. This is a startup which essentially trains kids or train students or train actually engineers for coding skills, right? And this was started by somebody who just came out of college, had a passion for coding and all of that, and he got funded, right? So there are opportunities, or there are situations where it happens, but it's very rare, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are the different methods schools can adopt to expose students to the entrepreneurial ecosystem?
Again, I think it'll definitely take me back to understanding, where we are, right? I think somewhere, we always try to look at solutions at the extremes. Okay, let's do this so we'll become an entrepreneur school, or let's do this, our kids will become entrepreneurs. So first, understanding, what is the expectation of doing something or introducing a pedagogy or methodology or whatever it is. So when the expectations are set very clear, that we can definitely not get into this whole thing that, okay, we want all our kids to come up with a startup idea. And all these kids are going to become, these businessmen, and then they'll have these startup companies, right? So the idea is again about the skill set and the value that it is going to add long term, whether they're going to have their own company or whether they're going to work for someone. So the whole entrepreneurship skill set is all about what kind of a value it's going to add to you. Doesn't matter what you're going to do in the future. And what schools can really do is, I might sound weird, but you have to be flexible about your timetable. You need to understand all these things should be part of the journey, and it should be part of every single day what you do. You can't have like a program, oh, our kids are going to do something like this once in a year, and at the end of the year they become entrepreneurs. No, it doesn't work that way, right?
Of course.
And I'm sure you as young entrepreneurs, you agree with me that it's a journey that you have gone through. And if schools can really create that time and space every single day, I'm not talking about something that you do once in a while. Every single day you create that, and something like when you really wake up, you don't really think about, oh, do I really have to brush today? Do I really have to walk today? So there are some things which have become habits. So how do you create that as a habit? And how can entrepreneurship pedagogies or models or whatever approach that we take create those habits, in children? That's when, it is more effective. So, for example, what we do is, for every single day, we have like 1.5 hours that our kids work on real-time problem statements given by companies. And that is something that they, do for the next 3 months. So every 3 months, they're given a new problem that they have to work on. Either you come up with a product or your service or an idea, it doesn't matter what the output is. And what we really, the method that we focus on is not the exact output or the solution that they come up with, but the journey that they're going throughout this process, which is again enabling them. You might fail at it, you have to come up with ideas, you have to meet experts. So again, it's about creating, the methodology is all about the journey that you go through. Yeah.
So I saw your Facebook post where the students had sown seeds and learned how to nurture them, and then it was for a family of 4 first initially, and then going forward. So how did you come up with that idea?
So again, it's very authentic. The ideas can come from anywhere. Right? So one of the ideas was, when we had this, Pratyusha's incident of the rape incident in Hyderabad, the idea came from our, 7th graders, where they said, we want to create a, safety locket. Right? And there were 2nd graders who said, we want to, write our own books and sell it to our pre-primary parents. So the ideas can be anything. And the great thing is that, especially when you're at school, you can take any risk. You can experiment with anything, which you can, which maybe I wouldn't really have that flexibility in my life, or what we wouldn't have. And as children, and when you're at schools, you have that flexibility. So the that's again in the approach that we take, that the ideas can come from anywhere. It's how you guide them and
the moral
how you allow them to get where they really want to be. Yeah.
Right. So sir, this would be for you. What would be your take on career counselors? Are they, what would you say, they're very job driven, or do they have an employer approach?
Oh, okay. So I don't want my children to think in terms of career. I want them to think in terms of their passions, their energy. Where is that gravitating towards? I don't know how we are doing on time, but in brief, I will say that you have to find something that will make you get off your bed in the morning excited. And if you haven't found it, then we have a problem. The parents have a problem, the teachers have a problem. The industrialists, the funders have a problem. Everybody has a problem. You need to find, like my son was saying, you need to find the company that you're comfortable with. And this is true even for careers. They need to find something that they're excited about. And they need to be having the conviction that they can go about it and pursue it. It's doing ordinary things with extraordinary enthusiasm. It's what Suranaji said. You have to pick up the most boring drudgery and you can make boatloads of money. You can also do puzzles on the side and have fun. So you can make money and you can also have fun. So there are many different ways to cut the problem. I just want to share one thought as a parent is, don't expect too much of the children that they will come up with a billion-dollar startup or they will be very successful starting up a company or selling a company. This is a process. This is a journey.
Of course.
I'm just extremely delighted that my children have an opportunity to be part of this journey. If they are sensitized to what it means to be an entrepreneur, what it means to embark on this journey, they've already succeeded in their endeavor here. They are like seeds. I don't expect them to sprout right away. They're like bombs with fuses. Just because you light a fuse, the bomb doesn't go off immediately. Sometimes it takes decades before they really get to the point where they can do something tangible for society and for themselves. So it's a slow, organic, steady process, and have low expectations of them. Let them have fun. Stay with them, persevere. And every opportunity you get, seize it. Support them. I mean, I'm sure my daughter hates being here sometimes. My son might have asked me, like, why are we in a 2-year program? But I believe in it because it gives them an opportunity to exercise their intellectual faculties. It spurs their learning ability. So every opportunity you get, seize it. Don't look at it as, I'm going to add 1 + 1, it's going to become 2 immediately. 1 + 1 becomes infinity, to speak in terms of the speaker this afternoon. So focus on organic, comfortable, very, very comfortable journey where you're convinced, where you're passionate, where you're sincere, and where you're excited about it.
So what I took from this conversation would be that baby steps matter a lot and they start at the lowest level possible, which is schools and at home. And then perhaps to funds as well.
Sure, we'll come there. We'll eventually come there.
Definitely. So is there anything else would you like to say? Or conclude the conversation today?
No, I think I'm quite delighted to be part of this entire session, right? I think this is like an emergence of a change which is happening, and a change which is very much needed, a conversation which is very much needed. We're talking about failures, we're talking about entrepreneurship at a young age, we're talking about taking risk at a young age, we're talking about building an environment and an ecosystem where kids can actually go out, take risk, and start something new. I think this is quite exciting for me, and I look forward that this journey should continue from here, and we should see a lot of young entrepreneurs like both of you coming out and making successful businesses.
Thank you so much, sir.
And you guys have done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Of course. So, I mean, since very honestly, this is not something that, it's not about mutual praise. And I think that's a fundamental skill set that the takeaway for me, from here is that if we can have more people believe in this, and if we can have, doesn't matter which economic background we come from, what our belief systems are, what we really want to do, if we can together as a community enable this kind of, approach, that whether it's at school, at home, or at companies, I think only when we come together as a community, something can happen. And I really appreciate, Metamorphosis for just having that conviction to just continue to do what they're doing, and we should definitely hope to see more and more students and more parents, and it's a learning for all of us, honestly. It's, every single person who's involved in an entrepreneurial journey, this is not just about, children, it's about parents, it's about educators, it's for everyone. It's a learning journey for all of us. As long as we're open to listen, I think things can happen. And a huge shout out to Metamorphosis on this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, panelists. It was lovely, and thank you for the appreciation. We'll always continue to do what we do. I would now like to call upon Mr. Shale to felicitate the panelists. Mr. Rakesh Gupta. Ms. Srilakshmi Reddy. Mr. Ravi Vemuri. Ms. Mridu Nagori. Ms. Pragya Nagori. One group photo.